This day in sports history. This episode is brought to you by the Sterling Soap Company. I'm a big fan of shave soap. I've been using different brands for years, and I recently gave Sterling's shave soaps a try, and I've been very happy with the results. Sterling's shave soaps give you a great lather and a frictionless feel that allows the razor to glide right over the skin for a super close shave. No skin irritation and a clean, refreshing feel with no soapy residue after. I can tell you without a doubt, it's simply the best shave I've ever had. And my wife has noticed too. And here's the thing. With the ability to purchase 1-ounce sample pucks, you can try out different scents to find the right one for you. Give Sterling Soap a try today. Visit sterlingsoap.com. That's STIRLING soap.com. And welcome back to This Day in Sports History, a member of the Sports History Network. You can find more podcasts at sportshistorynetwork.com. It's January 25th, and on this day in 2010, one man's entire NBA career started and ended in 3.9 seconds. Gone in 60 Seconds was a Nicolas Cage movie from 2000 that was a remake of the 1974 classic. Well, JamesOn Curry can only wish he'd been given another 56.1 seconds. He had the skills to be a good NBA player. There have been guys with a whole lot less skill and talent than JamesOn who had decent careers in the league. Guys with less promise and upside who had more than a cup of coffee there. JamesOn may have been handed a cup, but he just didn't get to sip from it for very long. Now look, I've got a lot of respect for anybody who makes it to that level. So this is not to make fun of the man who had the shortest NBA career of any player. It's merely to tell his story. And the story ends on this day in 2010, when Curry was on the bench for the Los Angeles Clippers, and he was inserted into the final 3.9 seconds of the third quarter in a game at Boston's TD Garden. The Celtics had the ball, and Curry was sent in to guard Rajon Rondo. Paul Pierce inbounded the ball to Ray Allen. Rondo cleared some space for Allen, who drove to the basket, but he lost the handle on the ball, and he just couldn't get a shot up before the end of the quarter. Curry headed to the bench, ready for more action in the fourth quarter. Instead, head coach Mike Dunleavy subbed in DeAndre Jordan for Curry to start the fourth. Curry didn't play the rest of the game. In fact, he's released 12 hours later, and he never played again in the NBA. That's it. JamesOn Curry's entire NBA career lasted 3.9 seconds. No shot, no rebound, no assist. He didn't even touch the ball. Now, he's not completely alone. BasketballReference.com indicates that there have been 8 other guys who've played a minute or less in their career, but none as short as JamesOn Curry's 3.9 seconds. It wasn't supposed to be like this, though. I actually saw JamesOn play as a high school player. He played for Eastern Alamance from Mebane, North Carolina. And I saw him play in a game, I think it was his junior year in the Charlotte area. He'd already committed to play for Roy Williams at North Carolina. He was a scoring machine who averaged more than 40 a game as a senior, and for a time he was the all-time leading scorer in North Carolina high school basketball history. Side note, he's now second on that list to Kobe White, who, interestingly enough, played for the Tar Heels and is now with the Chicago Bulls. Curry was a 5-star recruit with a path to superstardom laid out in front of him until he ran into a problem. The day after scoring 47 in a game in early February 2004, local police conducting a drug sting on area high school students arrested JamesOn and about 60 other Alamance County high school students from 6 different schools. North Carolina rescinded their scholarship offer soon after. Curry eventually got offers from other schools willing to give him a second chance, and he signed to play with Oklahoma State. He helped the Cowboys make it to the Sweet 16 his freshman year, and he started every game as a sophomore, averaging 14 points and 4 assists a game. NBA teams started showing some interest. Well, against head coach Eddie Sutton's advice, JamesOn declared his intent to play in the NBA after just 2 years in Stillwater. He was selected in the second round with the 51st pick by the Chicago Bulls, and they immediately sent him to the D-League for seasoning. Another screw-up cost him another shot when he was arrested for public urination in Portland in 2008. And then when he was actually on the Bulls roster, a missed team flight from Chicago to New York continued his problem child persona among folks with the Bulls that he just couldn't seem to escape. He was released by Chicago. He spent some time in Europe before coming back to the States and finally getting his chance with a 10-day contract with the Clippers that resulted in his one and only blink-of-an-eye moment on an NBA court on this night in 2010. On this day in 1972, it was perhaps the ugliest brawl on a basketball court. And seriously, if there is one uglier than this one, I don't even know if I want to see it. This was disturbing to watch. This was 6th-ranked Ohio State on the road at number 16, Minnesota. There were 17,000 folks packed into Williams Arena that night, and another 10,000 watching on closed-circuit TV in the adjacent hockey arena. The Buckeyes were up 50-44, and they had the basketball with 36 seconds left in the game. Buckeye center Luke Whitty drove to the basket, and he was flagrantly fouled by Minnesota's Clyde Turner. So Whitty is lying on the floor, and Minnesota's 6'9" Corky Taylor comes over and offers a hand to help Whitty get up. Well, when he does, Taylor pulls him closer, and then he knees Whitty in the groin, and he crumples to the floor again. And that's when the melee started. This wasn't just a couple of players. The entire Gopher bench emptied and started chasing Ohio State players. Fans poured out of the seats and started swinging. Fans came over from the hockey arena next door to get in on the brawl. Even the Minnesota Gopher mascot got in on the action and started punching Ohio State forward Mark Wager. Gopher forward Ron Behagen, who'd fouled out a few minutes earlier, can be seen in film footage from the game stomping on Whitty's head as he lies motionless on the floor. Minnesota forward Jim Brewer picked up Ohio State guard Greg Testerman and tossed him into the seats, where fans started pounding on him. The brawl lasted several minutes before a semblance of calm could be established, and it took that long because most of the security at the game that night had left the building with about 10 minutes to go to help with traffic after the game. The game was called off with time remaining on the clock. Ohio State players required a police escort to get back to their locker room and then later to their bus. 3 Buckeye basketball players were taken to a local hospital, with Mark Miner needing only a few stitches to close a cut over his eye, but the other 2, Wager and Whitty, were hospitalized in intensive care. Whitty needed 29 stitches to close cuts on his face, and he suffered a scratched cornea. In the aftermath, the Big Ten decided to only suspend 2 Minnesota players, Corky Taylor and Ron Behagen, for the remainder of the year. Minnesota head coach Bill Musselman is credited with creating the frenzy of emotion prior to this game, saying the game was the biggest in Minnesota basketball history and a loss would be worse than death because, well, you'd remember a loss and have to live with it. Ohio State coach Fred Taylor was apparently deeply affected by the fight and the resulting light penalties imposed on the Gophers. Prior to this, he'd won 72% of his games, and after it, his players noticed a change in his demeanor and his approach, and his winning percentage dropped to just 44%. He retired from coaching at the age of 52. It was as ugly a scene as you could possibly imagine that night. Lessons were learned, and hopefully, it is not a situation that we will ever see again. On this day in 1924, it was the opening day of the first Winter Olympic Games. It was held in Chamonix, France at the base of Mont Blanc from the 25th through February 5th. 16 countries, including the U.S., were represented, with Germany banned from competing due to their role in World War I. Now, several winter sports had actually been included in previous Summer Olympic Games. Figure skating was part of the 1908 London Games, and ice hockey had been played in Antwerp during the Summer Olympics in 1920. Well, but for obvious reasons, sports needing frozen surfaces weren't always conducive for warmer climates, so it was deemed that winter sports needed its own spectacle, and 1924 was the first winter sport-specific Olympics. There were 5 sports represented, with some of those subdivided into different disciplines. There was ice hockey, 4-man bobsleigh, curling, skating, and skiing. Skating included figure and speed skating disciplines, and skiing was split up into cross-country skiing, ski jumping, Nordic combined, which combined cross-country skiing and ski jumping, and an event called Military Patrol, which was a 4-man team event that has similarities to modern biathlon now, with cross-country skiing and shooting combined in one event. All the events were held outside, with ice hockey, speed skating, and figure skating sharing the same outdoor ice rink. A few of the interesting competitors in this Winter Olympiad: there was an 11-year-old Sonia Henne who competed in the 8-woman ice skating field, finishing 8th, but she was far from discouraged. She would come back in the 28 Olympics and win gold, and follow that up in 1932 and 1936 with 2 more gold medals. The American hockey team featured Taffy Abel, who was a Native American from the Ojibwe from Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. He helped the U.S. win silver, and he was the flag bearer for the 24-person Olympic squad from the States. He would go on to become the first Native American to play in the NHL in 1926 with the New York Rangers and play on a couple of Stanley Cup winners. Norway collected the most medals, walking away with a total of 17, including 4 golds. The U.S. won 4 total medals, with one of those being gold. And an interesting fact about that gold: that medal was won by speed skater Charles Jutraw on the first day of competition, making him the first ever gold medal winner of the Winter Olympics. And in 1939, boxer Joe Louis knocked out John Henry Lewis in the first round of a bout fought in Madison Square Garden. The two were friends, and this fight was more of a favor to John Henry, who was nearly blind in one eye, and the sight in the other wasn't so great either. Joe wanted to give John Henry one decent payday before he retired, which he did after this fight. And time now for today's That's Got Nothing to Do with Sports fun fact. Now, you've heard the term devil's advocate, right? Well, did you know that devil's advocate used to be an official position in the Catholic Church? The person in that position examined potential candidates for sainthood, looking for unfavorable character flaws or misrepresentations of their life. Pope John Paul II eliminated the position in 1983. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.